Welcome to Psych 101, Psychobiological Basis of Behavior. Study Session 1. Introduction. This study session introduces you to the general structure and functions of neurons. Our focus will be on classification, characteristics, and functions of neurons. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Show how neurons are responsible for the nervous system activities. 2. Outline the distinctive features and properties of neurons. 3. Classify neurons according to their structure, functions, or possession of myelin sheath. 4. Represent the process of nerve impulse in a chart. Neurons. Neurons are commonly referred to as nerve cells. They are the basic structural units of the nervous system. They are organized to form complex networks that perform the functions of the nervous system. Neurons cannot divide. Each neuron consists of a cell body and its processes, one axon and many dendrites. Bundles of axons bound together are called nerves. For survival, neurons need a continuous supply of oxygen and glucose. Unlike many other cells, neurons can synthesize chemical energy adenosine triphosphate (ATP) only from glucose. Neurons are responsible for the electrical activities of the nervous system. In order to function, the nervous system relies on nerve impulses or action potentials, which are similar to tiny electrical charges which maintains throughout the length of the neuron. The nervous system carries out its functions effectively and rapidly because information and instructions travel speedily as electric impulses along nerves from one part of the body to another almost instantaneously. A neuron consists of a nucleus, a membrane, mitochondrial, ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, vacuoles, and other structures typical of animal cells as shown in Figure 1.1. The membrane limits the flow of materials between the inside of the cell and the outside environment. A few chemicals, such as water, oxygen, and carbon dioxide, flow fairly freely across the membrane, while other substances flow fairly poorly or not at all. The nucleus is responsible for regulating the activities of the cell, including reproduction. The fluid inside the cell membrane is known as cytoplasm. The mitochondrion is the site for the metabolic activities that provide energy the cell requires for its activities. Ribosomes are for production of protein molecules. Some ribosomes float freely. Others are attached to the endoplasmic reticulum. Vacuoles are fluid-filled bubbles inside the cell. Nerve cell bodies. The distinctive feature that sets a neuron apart from other cells is its shape. The cell body is called the neuron cell body or soma, and the processes are called dendrites and axons. They form the gray matter of the nervous system and are found at the periphery of the brain and in the center of the spinal cord. The cell body contains the nucleus, some ribosome, and mitochondria, and other structures found in most cells. Much of neural metabolic processes take place in the body. Nerve cell bodies vary in size and in shape. They are microscopic and they range in diameter from 0.005 mm to 0.1 mm in mammals and up to a full millimeter in some invertebrates. Dendrites and axons. Dendrites are short, thin, highly branched cytoplasmic extensions of a neuron, which taper from their bases to their tips. Dendrites are the input parts of the neuron. When stimulated, they generate small electric currents that are conducted to the neuron cell body. Each nerve cell has only one axon. Axon carries nerve impulses away from the cell body. They are usually longer than dendrites, sometimes as long as 100 centimeters. Large axons and those of peripheral nerves are surrounded by a myelin sheath, which contains Schwann cells arranged along the length of the axon. Concentric layers of plasma membrane of Schwann cells wrap around the length of myelinated axons. There are tiny areas of exposed axolemma between adjacent Schwann cells called nodes of Ranvier, which assist the rapid transmission of nerve impulses. Properties of neurons. Neurons have two major properties, which are irritability and conductivity. Irritability. Irritability is the ability of neurons to initiate nerve impulses in response to stimuli from outside the body. E.g., a huge and drastic blood loss may lead to a reduction in blood pressure, or the inhalation of toxic gases may trigger the vomit center in the brain. Conductivity. It refers to the ability of a neuron to transmit an impulse. Types of neurons. Neurons are usually classified according to their function or structure. They could also be classified based on their myelin sheath possession. Classification of neurons according to their function or structure. The functional classification of neurons is based on the direction in which the action's potentials are conducted. Sensory or afferent neurons conduct action potentials towards the central nervous system, CNS, while motor or efferent neurons conduct action potentials away from the CNS towards muscles or glands. Interneurons or association neurons conduct action potentials from one neuron to another within the CNS. The structural classification scheme is based on the number of processes that extend from the neuron cell body. This includes 1. Multipolar neurons. They have many dendrites and a single axon. The dendrites vary in number and in their degree of branching. Most of the neurons within the CNS and motor neurons are multipolar. 2. Bipolar neurons. They have two processes, a dendrite and an axon. The dendrite is often specialized to receive the stimulus, and the axon conducts actions potentials to the CNS. Bipolar neurons are located in some sensory organs, such as in the retina of the eye and in the nasal cavity. 3. Unipolar neurons. They have a single process extending from the cell body. One branch extends to the CNS and the other extends to the periphery and has dendrite-like sensory processes. The two branches function as a single axon. The sensory receptors respond to stimuli resulting in the production of axon potentials that are transmitted to the CNS. Classification according to possession of myelin sheath. 1. Myelinated neurons. These have myelin sheaths, which serves as an insulator and also increases the speed of conducting nerve impulses. 2. Unmyelinated neurons. They do not possess myelin sheath, hence do not possess the properties described above. The nerve impulse. Nerve impulse is an electrical impulse traveling along an axon when a neuron is stimulated. For the nervous system to coordinate communication within and outside an organism, the neurons must receive nervous stimulation, upon which the message is transmitted and interpreted, following which response stimuli is sent to the appropriate organ or tissue. Humans depend on electric signals to communicate and process information. The electrical signals are produced by cells and are called action potentials. Action potentials are important means by which cells transfer information from one part of the body to another. The ability to perceive our environment, perform complex mental activities, and act thereof depends on action potentials. You will now be exposed to a basic knowledge of the electrical properties of cells, which is necessary for understanding many of the normal functions and pathologies of the body. These electrical properties result from ionic concentration differences across the plasma membrane and from the permeability characteristics of the plasma membrane. Neurochemical changes in neurons and nerve conductivity. In the resting state, the nerve cell membrane is polarized due to the differences in the concentrations of ions across the plasma membrane. This means that there is different electrical charge on each side of the membrane that is called resting membrane potential. At rest, the charge on the outside is positive and inside is negative. The major ions involved are sodium, which is the main cation in the extracellular space, and potassium, which is the main cation in the intracellular space. In the resting state, there is a continual tendency for these ions to diffuse along their concentration gradients, that is, potassium flows outside and sodium into nerve cells. However, whenever any stimulus flows into the cell, the permeability of the plasma membrane to these ions changes. Initially, sodium flows into the neuron from the extracellular fluid, leading to what is known as depolarization. This creates a nerve impulse or action potential. This passage of electrical current occurs only in one way along the length of a nerve, and it occurs very rapidly. From another cycle, that is repolarization, to occur, a longer time is taken. In the process, potassium ions flow out of the neurons, reverting the membrane potential to its resting state. This phase is called the refractory period, during which restimulation is not possible. The sodium pump returns sodium ions from the cell for potassium ions to flow back into the cell. The all or none principle. An action potential can be compared to the flash system of a camera. When the shutter is triggered, that is, reaches threshold, the camera flashes. An action potential is produced. If the battery is weak, sufficient current is not generated, the trigger will not be excited, and hence the flash will not work. When there is sufficient current, that is stimulus, the shutter will be triggered and the brightness of each flash will be similar to previous flashes. This means that action potentials requires sufficient threshold potential so that all the permeability changes responsible for an action potential will occur and vice versa. Saltatory conduction. Saltatory conduction is the manner in which a nerve impulse is propagated along a myelinated nerve fiber in a sequence of jumps from one mode to Ranvier to the other. This increases the speed of propagation such that the fastest fibers can conduct to skeletal muscles at a rate of 130 meters per second, while the slowest fiber travels at 0.5 meters per second. Study session summary. In this study session, you are exposed to neurons. Neurons are cells organized to form complex networks that perform the functions of the nervous system. Dendrites are short, thin, highly branched cytoplasmic extensions of a neuron. Each nerve cell has only one axon, carrying nerve impulses away from the cell body. Neurons have two major properties, that is, irritability and conductivity. Neurons are usually classified according to their function or structure. Neurons could also be classified based on whether it has myelin sheath or not. You also learned that the regulation of activities in the body is jointly carried out by the endocrine and nervous systems. Nervous system stimulation provides an immediate response, while endocrine activity is slower and longer. Thank you for listening. End of study session 1.